They mocked the cleaning lady until she revealed her devastating secret. The mop bucket squeaked across the linoleum floor of Westfield High School as Marcus Delacroix pushed it down the empty hallway. At 17, he'd been working as a part-time janitor for 3 months now, saving money for college while finishing his senior year. His lanky frame, perpetually hunched from hours of mopping and scrubbing, made him nearly invisible to most students. The oversized grey custodial uniform hung loosely on his thin shoulders, and his thick-rimmed glasses constantly slipped down his nose as he worked. Marcus had deliberately chosen the evening shift to avoid his classmates. Being both a student and a janitor at the same school was a special kind of humiliation he'd rather not advertise. The few who knew treated him with either pity or contempt, and he preferred neither. As he rounded the corner near the gymnasium, 3 familiar voices made his stomach clench. Tyler Garrison, Brett Kowalski, and Jamal Hutchinson, the unholy trinity of Westfield High's wrestling team. Tyler, their self-appointed leader, stood 6'3" with the build of someone who'd been lifting weights since middle school. His blonde hair was perpetually styled in that deliberately messy way that probably took 20 minutes each morning. Brett, stockier but equally muscled, followed Tyler like a loyal pit bull, always eager to prove himself. Jamal, the newest addition to their group, seemed to participate more out of peer pressure than genuine malice, but that didn't make him any less dangerous. Well, Tyler's voice dripped with mock surprise. If it isn't Janitor Boy. Shouldn't you be in class, Marcus? Oh, wait, I forgot. You're too good for regular school hours now that you're part of the custodial elite. Marcus kept his eyes on the floor, continuing to mop in steady, practiced strokes. Just ignore them. They'll get bored and leave. Hey, I'm talking to you, mop jockey. Tyler stepped directly onto the freshly cleaned floor with his muddy sneakers, leaving dark streaks across the wet surface. You deaf under all that greasy hair? Brett laughed, a harsh bark that echoed in the empty hallway. Maybe he's practicing for his future career. This is probably the best he'll ever do. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He'd learned long ago that engaging only made things worse. His mother had taught him to control his temper, to channel his anger into something productive. The irony wasn't lost on him. She'd been teaching him Muay Thai since he was 8 years old, turning their garage into a makeshift gym where they'd spend hours training together. She'd competed professionally before a car accident ended her career, and she'd passed every technique, every discipline, every ounce of her knowledge to her son. But using those skills here, against these idiots, it would only cause problems. College scouts were watching the wrestling team. Tyler's father was on the school board. The power dynamics were clear, and Marcus wasn't stupid enough to upset them over some juvenile taunting. Look at him, Jamal added, though his voice lacked the venom of the others. Can't even afford real clothes. Has to wear that janitor costume. At least I earned these clothes, Marcus muttered before he could stop himself. Tyler's eyes lit up with predatory interest. What was that? Did the help just talk back to me? The wrestler moved faster than Marcus expected, kicking the mop bucket over. Dirty water cascaded across the floor, soaking Marcus's worn sneakers and the bottom of his uniform pants. The smell of industrial cleaner filled the air. Oops, Tyler said with exaggerated innocence. Looks like you've got more work to do. Better get to it, Janitor Boy. This is what you're good at, right? Marcus stared at the spreading puddle, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the mop handle. In his mind, he could see exactly how this could go differently. A quick teep kick to Tyler's solar plexus, followed by a devastating elbow to Brett's jaw as he inevitably rushed to help. Jamal would probably freeze, giving Marcus time to... No. He forced the thoughts away. His mother hadn't trained him to be a bully, even to other bullies. The strongest fighters are those who know when not to fight, she always said. Clean it up, Brett commanded, stepping closer. On your hands and knees, like the dog you are. I'll use the mop, Marcus said quietly, bending to right the bucket. Tyler's foot came down on the mop handle, pinning it to the floor. I said on your hands and knees. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the fluorescent lights harsher. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, feel the familiar pre-fight adrenaline beginning to flow. His muscles tensed involuntarily, years of training preparing his body for combat, despite his mind's protests. Is there a problem here? The voice cut through the tension like a blade. Mrs. Elena Volkov, the night custodian, stood at the end of the hallway with her own cleaning cart. At 53, she was a compact woman with steel-grey hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her weathered face bore the lines of someone who'd lived a hard life, and her dark eyes missed nothing. She'd been working at Westfield High for 5 years, keeping to herself, speaking only when necessary in accented English that hinted at her Eastern European origins. "No problem, ma'am," Tyler said, his tone shifting to fake politeness. "Just talking to our friend Marcus here." Mrs. Volkov's gaze swept over the spilled water, the muddy footprints, the 3 wrestlers looming over Marcus. "You boys should go home. School closed 2 hours ago." "Public property," Brett said with a smirk. "We're allowed to be here. Wrestling team has 24-hour access to the weight room." "Then go to weight room," Mrs. Volkov said flatly. "This is hallway. I need to clean." Tyler's jaw tightened at being dismissed by a cleaning lady. Marcus could see the calculation in his eyes. How far could he push this without getting into actual trouble? "Sure thing," Tyler said finally. "We'll get out of your workspace." He made the last 2 words sound like an insult. As he passed Mrs. Volkov, he deliberately knocked into her shoulder, causing her to take a step back. "Oops. Sorry about that. These hallways are just so narrow." Mrs. Volkov said nothing, but Marcus caught something in her expression, a flicker of something dark and dangerous that vanished almost instantly. The 3 wrestlers sauntered away, their laughter echoing off the lockers. At the corner, Tyler turned back. "See you tomorrow, janitor boy. Try not to drown in your mop bucket." After they were gone, Mrs. Volkov approached Marcus. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Marcus said, embarrassed that she'd witnessed his humiliation. "Thanks for that." She studied him for a moment. "They do this often?" Marcus shrugged, trying to seem casual. "It's nothing I can't handle." "Handling and enduring are different things," she said cryptically. Then, without another word, she began helping him clean up the spilled water. They worked in companionable silence, and Marcus found himself stealing glances at the older woman. There was something about the way she moved, economical, balanced, always aware of her surroundings. It reminded him of, but no, that was ridiculous. She was just a cleaning lady. The next few weeks fell into a predictable pattern. Tyler and his crew would find Marcus during his evening shifts, and the harassment would begin. They'd knock over his supplies, track mud through clean hallways, empty trash cans he'd just filled. Once, they'd cornered him in the bathroom and forced his head into a toilet, though they hadn't actually flushed. Tyler was smart enough to avoid anything that could be classified as actual assault. Marcus endured it all with gritted teeth and clenched fists. His mother noticed the change in him during their training sessions. "You're too tense," she observed, catching his roundhouse kick with ease. "Your anger is making you sloppy." "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Marcus lied, launching into a combination of punches. She blocked them all effortlessly. "Marcus, I've been reading your body language since you were in diapers. Talk to me." But how could he explain? How could he tell his mother, a woman who'd fought in rings across the country, who'd never backed down from anyone, that her son was being bullied by some high school wrestlers and was too scared to fight back? "Just school stuff," he mumbled. She didn't press, but he caught her worried glances during the rest of their session. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in early November. Marcus was cleaning the cafeteria when he heard loud voices from the adjacent hallway. He recognized Tyler's laugh immediately. But there was something different about it, meaner, more aggressive. He'd been drinking, Marcus realized. All three of them had been. "Check this out," Brett's slurred voice carried clearly. 60 points if I can hit the trash can from here." Marcus peered around the corner to see Brett preparing to launch a half-full soda bottle down the hallway. Mrs. Volkov was at the far end, her back to them as she mopped. The bottle sailed through the air, missing the trash can entirely and exploding against the wall, spraying sticky soda across the freshly cleaned floor and speckling Mrs. Volkov's uniform. She turned slowly, her face expressionless. "Oh, sorry about that, Grandma," Tyler called out, his words slightly slurred. "Brett's got shit aim when he's wasted." "You clean this up," Mrs. Volkov said calmly. "Now." "Clean it up yourself," Jamal laughed. "That's literally your job." "Yeah," Brett added, stumbling slightly as he approached her. "What are you gonna do, report us? Nobody's gonna believe some old immigrant lady over the wrestling team." Mrs. Volkov stood perfectly still as the three boys surrounded her. Marcus felt his heart racing. This was different from their usual bullying. This felt dangerous. "You know what your problem is?" Tyler said, getting right in her face. The alcohol on his breath was probably overwhelming. "You don't show proper respect. You walk around here like you're somebody, but you're not. You're nothing. Just some old lady who cleans up other people's messes." "Please leave," Mrs. Volkov said quietly. "Please leave," Brett mocked in a high-pitched voice. "What's the matter, scared?" "You should be. Nobody cares about the help around here." What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Tyler, emboldened by alcohol and his friends' laughter, reached out and grabbed Mrs. Volkov's behind, squeezing hard. "How about you show us some respect for a change, babushka?" The sound of the slap echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. But it wasn't Mrs. Volkov who had been slapped. Tyler staggered backward, his hand flying to his face, where a vivid red handprint was already forming. His eyes were wide with shock and rapidly growing rage. You hit me? You fucking hit me?" Mrs. Volkov stood in a stance Marcus recognized immediately, a perfect fighting position, weight balanced, hands raised but not threatening. "Yet, you touch me again, boy, and slap will be least of your problems." "You're done," Tyler snarled, his face contorting with fury. "My dad's on the school board. You're fired." But first, he lunged at her, his wrestling training evident in his movements despite his intoxication. He never made contact. Mrs. Volkov moved like water, flowing around his attack with a grace that made Marcus's breath catch. Tyler's momentum carried him past her, and she helped him along with a subtle redirection that sent him crashing into the lockers. Before Brett could react, she'd pivoted, her legs sweeping his feet from under him in a move so smooth it looked choreographed. He hit the ground hard, the air whooshing from his lungs. Jamal, credit to his intelligence, took a step back, hands raised. "Hey, I don't want any trouble." "Then sit," Mrs. Volkov commanded, and Jamal immediately dropped to the floor, scooting back against the wall. Tyler was back on his feet, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. "You're gonna pay for that." He charged again, this time remembering his training, shooting for a double-leg takedown. Mrs. Volkov's knee came up at exactly the right moment, catching him in the solar plexus. As he doubled over, gasping, she grabbed his head and brought her knee up again, stopping just short of his face, a warning rather than a strike. Tyler collapsed to his knees, fighting for breath. Brett had managed to get back up, and Marcus could see him reaching for his phone. Whether to call for help or record, he wasn't sure. Mrs. Volkov noticed too. "You post anything, and I post this," she said, producing her own phone from her pocket. Marcus realized with shock that she'd been recording the entire encounter, probably from the moment they'd thrown the bottle. Sexual assault of school employee. "How you think that plays for your wrestling scholarships?" Brett's hand froze. "Delete your video," she ordered. "Now." With shaking hands, Brett complied. Mrs. Volkov surveyed the three boys, Tyler still on his knees gasping, Brett standing but clearly terrified, Jamal pressed against the wall like he was trying to disappear into it. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. You think because I clean floors, I am nothing. Let me tell you something, little boys. Before I come to America, I was Systema instructor for Moscow police. You know Systema? Russian martial art. Very practical, very painful. I teach hard men to fight harder. Then I come here for better life for my daughter. And yes, I clean floors. But cleaning floors doesn't make me weak. It makes me humble. You understand difference? Tyler had finally caught his breath enough to speak. Your father will do nothing. Mrs. Volkov cut him off. You tell him what? That you and your drunk friends sexually assault woman old enough to be your grandmother, and she defend herself. Please tell him, tell everyone. I have video. She pocketed her phone and continued. But I am reasonable woman. You want this to go away? Fine. From now on, you leave alone anyone who works here. Marcus, me, other custodians, cafeteria workers, everyone. You show respect. You see mess, you clean it. You see someone needs help, you help. You understand? Three heads nodded frantically. Good. Now you go home. You sober up. Tomorrow you come to school and be better people. Or maybe I remember I still have video on phone. Maybe I think school board should see anyway. Up to you. The three wrestlers scrambled to their feet and fled, Tyler limping slightly, Brett supporting him, Jamal leading the way like he couldn't get away fast enough. Marcus emerged from his hiding spot, his mouth hanging open. Mrs. Volkov, that was... How did you... She turned to him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled. It transformed her face, making her look years younger. Come, help me clean up soda mess, and I tell you story. As they worked side by side, she spoke. What I told them was true. I was Systema instructor. My husband, he was instructor too. We had good life in Russia, but we wanted better for our Katya. So we come here, start over. My husband, he died 3 years ago. Cancer. I could go back to teaching fighting, but... She shrugged. I am tired of violence. Cleaning is honest work, peaceful, until tonight. They deserved it, Marcus said firmly. They've been terrorizing people for years. She glanced at him shrewdly. Including you, yes? I see how they treat you, but you never fight back. Why? Marcus hesitated, then found himself telling her everything. His mother's training, his fears about college and scholarships, the careful balance he tried to maintain. Mrs. Volkov listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. Your mother sounds like wise woman. She is right. Strongest fighters know when not to fight. But she would also tell you, I think, that sometimes not fighting is its own form of weakness. You let them make you small. That is not strength. That is fear. But you just said you were tired of violence, Marcus pointed out. I am tired of unnecessary violence, she corrected. Tonight was necessary. They crossed line. And you know what? I am not sorry. First time in 3 years I feel like myself again. They finished cleaning in companionable silence. As they prepared to part ways, Mrs. Volkov stopped him. Marcus, those boys, they will leave you alone now. But there will be others. There always are. You must decide, will you be victim or will you be yourself? Your mother gave you gift. Not just fighting skill, but confidence, discipline, strength. Don't waste it because you're afraid of what people think. Marcus nodded slowly, her words sinking in. Thank you, Mrs. Volkov, for everything. Elena, she said. Friends call me Elena. The next day at school was surreal. Tyler, Brett, and Jamal moved through the hallways like ghosts, keeping their heads down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. When Tyler passed Marcus between classes, he actually stepped aside, mumbling what might have been an apology. Word spread quickly, as it always did in high school. The wrestling team had been put in their place by the night-cleaning lady. Stories grew in the telling. By lunch, Elena had supposedly taken on all three at once, throwing them around like rag dolls, making them cry and beg for mercy. Some versions had her pulling out nunchucks or doing backflips. Marcus found himself walking taller, not because he'd suddenly become brave, but because he'd been given permission to be himself. When a sophomore accidentally knocked his books from his hands, Marcus didn't scramble to pick them up in embarrassed silence. He calmly collected them, accepted the kid's flustered apology, and moved on. After school, instead of hiding until his janitorial shift, Marcus went to the gym. The wrestling team was practicing, and several members looked up nervously when he entered. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to use the weight room, something he'd been entitled to do all along, but had avoided out of fear. As he worked out, he caught Tyler watching him from across the room. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw something he'd never expected: respect, and maybe a little fear. Tyler nodded once, almost imperceptibly, then turned back to his practice. That evening, Marcus found Elena in the break room, sipping tea and reading a Russian newspaper on her phone. "How are they treating you today?" she asked without looking up. "Like I'm radioactive," Marcus admitted. "Everyone's acting like I might be dangerous by association." Elena chuckled. "Good. Little fear keeps people polite." She set down her phone and looked at him seriously. "But remember, respect from fear is shallow thing. True respect comes from being good person who happens to be strong, not strong person who happens to be good. You understand?" Marcus nodded. "I think so. My mom says something similar. Smart woman. I would like to meet her someday." "She'd like you," Marcus said, then hesitated. "Elena, do you miss it? Teaching, I mean?" Her eyes grew distant. "Sometimes. But I teach in different way now. Tonight, I teach you. Last week, I help young girl in cafeteria stand up to boyfriend who controls her. Month ago, I show security guard better way to handle aggressive parents. Teaching doesn't always happen in dojo. Over the following weeks, the change at Westfield High was remarkable. Tyler and his crew not only stopped bullying, but actively intervened when they saw others doing it. Marcus once witnessed Brett physically stepping between a freshman and some older kids who were hassling him. The transformation wasn't perfect. They were still arrogant jocks, but they'd learned consequences existed. Marcus flourished in the new environment. He joined the martial arts club, no longer hiding his skills. When the instructor learned about his Muay Thai background, she asked him to help teach. He made friends, real ones, who appreciated him for who he was rather than who he pretended to be. Elena became a mentor and friend. Sometimes, after their shifts, she'd show him Systema techniques in the empty gymnasium, her movements fluid and devastating despite her age. In return, he taught her some of his mother's Muay Thai combinations. She was a quick learner, adapting the techniques to complement her existing skills. "You know," she said one evening as they practiced, "my Katya is studying to be teacher. Physical education. I think maybe when she graduates, I help her open school. Martial arts for kids who need confidence, for women who need protection, for anyone who needs to find strength." "That's amazing," Marcus said, genuinely excited for her. "You'd be a great teacher. You already are." "Maybe you help sometimes," she suggested, "when you're not busy with college?" "I'd be honored." The semester flew by. Marcus's grades improved now that he wasn't constantly stressed about avoiding bullies. He even got a partial scholarship to the state university, not for athletics, but for an essay he wrote about finding strength through adversity and the unexpected teachers who shape our lives. On his last shift before graduation, Marcus found Elena waiting for him with a wrapped gift. Inside was a simple black belt with Russian characters embroidered on one end. "It says, 'Strength through wisdom,'" she explained, "is not official rank or anything, just reminder." From one warrior to another, Marcus felt his eyes burning with unexpected emotion. "Elena, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing, just promise. When you see someone being made small, you help them remember they are big. When you see someone alone, you stand with them. When you see injustice, you act, not always with fists, but always with courage." "Yes?" Yes, Marcus promised. Always. Graduation day arrived with all its pomp and ceremony. As Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he spotted Elena in the crowd, sitting with his mother. The two women were chatting animatedly, and Marcus could only imagine what combat techniques they were discussing. Tyler Garrison was 2 names ahead of him in the graduation line. As they passed each other after receiving their diplomas, Tyler stopped him. "Hey, Marcus, I know I never really... I was a real asshole to you. I'm sorry. For all of it." Marcus studied him for a moment, then extended his hand. "We were kids. We're not anymore. Do better at college, yeah?" Tyler shook his hand firmly. "Yeah, I will. And Marcus, that lady Mrs. V, she's badass. You're lucky to have her in your corner." "I know," Marcus said simply. As the ceremony concluded and families gathered for pictures, Marcus stood between his mother and Elena, both women beaming with pride. His mother had been right all along. The strongest fighters knew when not to fight. But Elena had taught him something equally important. Sometimes standing up for others required standing up for yourself first. The 3 of them posed for one more picture, and as the camera flashed, Marcus thought about the future. College awaited, with all its challenges and opportunities. There would be new bullies, new obstacles, new reasons to be afraid. But he would face them differently now, with the wisdom of 2 warriors guiding him, and the knowledge that true strength came not from the ability to hurt others, but from the courage to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Behind them, the sun set over Westfield High, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was an ending, yes, but also a beginning. And Marcus Delacroix, former janitor boy, future protector of the vulnerable, was ready for whatever came next. In the years that followed, Marcus would often think back to that November night when everything changed. Not because Elena had beaten up 3 bullies, though that story would become legend at Westfield High, but because she had shown him that dignity and strength could coexist with humility and hard work. That cleaning floors didn't diminish a warrior any more than wearing a uniform could contain one. And sometimes, late at night in his dorm room, he would run his fingers over the Russian characters on his belt and remember his promise. When you see someone being made small, help them remember they are big. It was a promise he intended to keep, one act of courage at a time.